Evening all on PlayChess and also streaming to YouTube. Hi all. So I thought this week we could carry on from last week, having a look at Fischer going on to the quarter-final match in 1971. So he qualified by winning the 1970 Interzonal, which we've covered in the last few weeks and last year. 3 games at a time. I propose we carry on looking 3 games at a time. That's quite a significant number of games actually in an hour session. But let's have a look. So Mark Taimanov was famous actually. He had 2 careers, not just in chess, but as a concert pianist. He was one of the best in the whole of the USSR. One of the greatest concert pianists. And actually that had a good advantage for him, apparently. The jealousy from chess players, because they could consider him as a pianist, and from pianists they could consider him as a chess player. So there was less professional jealousy. So that's something very interesting. In the USSR at the time, a lot of players were professional, just from the government support, so it was easier to kind of be a professional. And I think the expectation he would do quite well against Fischer. So let's have a look at each of those games. It was a 6-game match, the quarter-final match on the lead-up to the 1972 World Chess Championship. So Fischer, at that time, played actually the King's Indian Defence with black. So some of these are King's Indian Defence games. And actually I think my own inspiration to play the King's Indian Defence came from both Fischer and Kasparov, 2 of my favourite players. So let's have a look at this game. Mark Taimanov was playing what was known as the Cautionary attack system in I think a couple of these games, and I think this one features it. So let's see. D4 from Mike Taimanov, Knight F6, C4. So we have the King's Indian Defence, one of Fischer's favourites. So black is conceding the centre, the space, trying to undermine it later. So it's not so popular nowadays. I mean, obviously it is still played by a lot of grandmasters, but not as frequently as Slavs and Grunfelds at the moment. But okay, so let's see. Knight F3, castles. Bishop E2, so this is like mainline stuff so far. E5, it's all mainline stuff. White castles, Knight C6, D5, Knight E7, and here, this is where things get interesting. So often in the mainline, I think like Knight E1, but here we have this cautionary attack system, and we see this move 9 Bishop D2. So the bishop is just vacating the c1 square. It looks like a modest move. It's to do with queenside play, but also with the bishop on d2, black is black's plan of playing for f5. White has a very interesting idea to play knight g5 and e6 later on if black plays f5. I mean, that's a general kind of pattern of this system which we're about to see. So black prepares this move f5. He gets the knight out of the way. So f5 is on the cards. Now with the bishop d2 we've got a battery opportunity as well. So the question about h6, maybe that's a little bit more dubious here, because we can always put battery pressure on h6. I'm going to put on a kibitzer about this actually, this particular idea of bishop d2. I'll put it on the kibitzer here, because usually you'd want to kind of consider playing h6 as a preparation for f5, because usually you don't want knight g5 to e6. If black plays h6 here, maybe that helps justify the system. Sorry, knight e8. It's white's move, rook c1, so he's getting on with potential c5. If black plays h6. Okay, I don't think, well, it's not a big deal about the battery or anything. It does waste a bit of time. Maybe, okay, white is putting some queenside pressure quite quickly. I don't think this is a big deal. Knight e1, f5. Okay. this position is an advantage for white. White's pretty solid, but yeah, Fischer's not playing h6. I mean, for me, this is a curious question why h6 isn't played. The idea of allowing a knight to e6 and then knight d5, it looks a little bit on the scary side, but this is what happens. It's actually the engine's top choice not to play h6, just play f5 immediately. So we get this idea this e6 square can be used, but should it? Okay, it's taken, g takes, and now this knight g5, so the knight's coming into e6. So it's a little bit scary on the light squares. You'd think this light square bishop might become quite important. But Fischer encourages this knight e6. The pawn looks initially to be a bit unsafe, but with knight d5 as a powerful resource, stuff like that, well, there's other resources as well. This pawn isn't so vulnerable. In fact, the light squares with the bishop on at e2, I think they're quite volatile. If we try to go with a pawn like this is another question really to ask. g4 is the engine choice. This is fascinating because this kind of crumbling of the light squares, I think, would be a symptom of this system. You're giving up your light square bishop on c8. So, I mean, this kind of position is pretty disgusting. What does black actually do here? If he plays here, then we've weakened the light squares here. Bishop d3. So it's an interesting system, but the right approach would seem to be queen c8 to attack this pawn on e6. So one question, well, c7 is guarded, so there's no knight d5 resource, because I think c7, with c7 guarded, well, let's see, takes, still white's got a little bit of play apparently from an engine perspective with queen b3, but this should be okay. This should be okay. Check. Still white's a little bit better. From an engine point of view, white would be a little bit better here. It's interesting because we have this bishop pair and there seems to be some weaknesses lurking around the light squares. It's a bit of play, but does it justify the pawn? Queen c8. Okay, so after queen c8 we see actually instead of knight d5 we see queen b3. I mean, knight d5 is actually quite an interesting move as an alternative to queen b3. We can, I suppose they're transposing into each other anyway, except now c6 is possible to stop knight d5, which Fischer plays. So c6, and actually technically maybe this, I'm not trying to be completely pedantic about this, but maybe if it might be the fact that knight d5, the fact might be that knight d5 is more accurate here. This looks to be okay for black. There's pressure on b7. There's going to be a kind of trade of pawns, this one for this pawn. The light square bishop you'd think is dangerous, and it threatens to come in with bishop f7 now. But yeah, serious I think attention needs to be given to that idea of knight d5 and queen b3, because from the engine perspective this is actually technically slightly better for black, this position here. Although white's got the light square bishop, the pawn on e6 which can be traded from b7, technically this looks to be a little bit better, that this trade is actually possible, the b7 pawn for the centre pawn. If that centre pawn's left, then bishop f7. We haven't got time for this. I think just bishop f7 check, and white's going to be a load better with this entrenchment. Queen a3. This is starting to get nasty. You can't just leave that there. It's very difficult to evict that. So we have this like trade is encouraged for the e6 pawn for the b7 pawn. Okay. So for King's Engine experts, yeah, knight d5 I think is scarier than this position. You can go for this trade for b7 for e6. White has got that potentially dangerous light square bishop. Sorry, question on Play Chess. Oh, Danny boy, isn't it a sin to trade the white square bishop in the King's Engine? It really does depend on the particular positions. Here, black's central influence, the pawns. seems to be potentially rolling forward. The bishop might be a tactical target as well. The queen is a little bit out of play on b7. It really is on the specific positions. So here, yeah, although, yeah, is that light square bishop dangerous here? We've got to factor in central pawn mobility. Okay, so this is move 17, yeah, queen takes b7. So we have this strange position. The cautionary attack system, as it's so named, by the way, was from when Fischer, he played cautionary in I think it was the 1970 Blitz, and Fischer won that game, but maybe it was analysed or something, and Taimanov took it up in this game and in another game. So it's the cautionary position with the bishop d2. So we have the rook attacked. So black protects the rook and hits the bishop with one move with knight f6. Okay. So the rook's protected, the bishop's attacked, the bishop drops back. Is this light square bishop so amazing? Well, also we have got potential semi-open file here, and also pressure on the b file. The two files look quite dangerous potentially. Here the queen is kicked, goes to a6. If it goes to c7, this is going to be really bad news. Apparently, this is like +4. Apparently, I think there's a very bad problem if it's +4. Let's see what this is. It's not just rook takes b2, a5, and we've got the idea of basically we've taken away a5 from the queen, and we're just going to play knight e8 to munch that queen. Next move, the queen's not going anywhere. Is that right? Knight a4, knight e8. We're munching that queen. Yeah, so the queen has got to get out of there. Queen a6 is played. So Fischer gets the b2 pawn. Rook takes b2. Isn't black slightly better here? 5, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's a pawn up. Rook on the 7th. White with the bishop pair. Is the light square bishop going to be really dangerous? Well, rook fd1. Let's see. Rook fd1. We see what seems to be a very logical move, e4. In some respects, it's potentially this diagonal is pretty good. This e5 square might be useful. We see queen a3. The rook goes back. But there is pressure now on d6. Bishop f4. It seems very comfortable to use that square. So how many choices with this d6 pawn here? We've got 3 things now attacking it, and that was actually adding 2 things attacking it. Bishop f4. So we can't exactly play rook d8. So it's basically either knight e8 or d5 is the engine choice. d5 is Fischer's choice. It's one of the strongest moves. Just play d5. There's no immediate tactical disaster, although there seems to be a very harmonious position for white with the rooks there in the centre. C takes, C takes. And now knight b5. So the threat here includes knight c7 to fork queen and rook. So how is this parried, this knight c7? Or rook c7 is also pretty dangerous. Fischer played knight g6 here. Okay, so in this position, it seems, yeah, with this attack, is knight c7 still possible? I'm not sure it is that great. Knight c7, queen f7, and the f4's hanging here. So here, I don't think this is particularly good. We can kick the queen and just move the rook. So no, forget knight c7 now after knight g6. But positionally, we can gain a tempo on the queen and establish a nice blockade on the d5 pawn. That's what's played. Queen d7. White has this nice grip on the dark squares right now. The pawns are pretty committed there, and we have a dark square grip after queen e3. So the question is this really worth a pawn here? Also, it seems tactically bishop takes h6 is now on. If I asked you to evaluate this position, would you say white has enough compensation here? Is he just a pawn down? I mean, white has got that light square bishop as well Is it that dangerous? If I gave you 20 seconds to evaluate this position, what would you say? Do you think... so it's black to play here after queen e3. Who do you think is better, white or black here? And I'll tell you the engine evaluation, which you might find surprising. In this particular position, there seems to be, I mean, I don't want to bias what you're thinking, but there seems to be a nice blockade on the dark squares. The rooks seem well, the bishop seems well. Where is the passed pawn? Okay, Matthew Paternoster, I don't think white could lose from this position. White is probably factionally better. Equal from someone else. I like the blockade on d4 from Jim Sprout. Yeah, JWS from 555 on Play Chess, equal, yeah. The engine evaluation is actually slightly better for white, even approaching 0.50, it's 0.43 technically. So the reason for this, let's see, I mean, why would this be? Okay, well, King h7 was played, protecting the h6 pawn. I don't think it's better to take on f4. We might just be helping white. If we take on f4, then we've got some immediate problems with f5, which are difficult to do something about, in fact. So yeah, we just protect this pawn instead. And now, okay, here there was an opportunity to use the light square bishop, it seems, technically. Because it seems sensitive that this rook is guarding the entry point c7. Some precision might have been needed here, because white is playing a pawn down. It seems that the move bishop a6 is dangerous. Technically, this wasn't played. As an example, rook b6, we're going to allow rook c7, really? That's quite dangerous, maybe, but there's even better. Just harass the queen, and then play it, rook c7. And all of a sudden, you see white's got, you know, a very dangerous position. If the knight's going on the retreat here, this looks really quite dangerous. So yeah, it seems, you know, the position here, I mean, it's starting to look very, very pleasant for white. But this wasn't played. This kind of harassment with bishop a6 and bishop b5 wasn't played. It's more accurate to harass the queen there. If rook c7, if rook c7, queen a4, so you've got to be careful of black hitting stuff. But yeah, get the rook away from c7 and then play this. It's interesting. Sorry, bishop b5 here. If takes, rook c7, then we're going to take on b5. Very interesting idea, bishop a6. So yeah, I mean, that is kind of white's trump card. He's got the light square bishop here, but he doesn't make use of it that aggressively, it seems. So he played actually the meek h3 move instead. There's actually an evaluation change here, just with playing h3 instead of bishop a6. White seemed to have could have been onto something to get a rook infiltrating there carefully with bishop a6 and bishop b5. Very tactical but positional objective. And now this gives the opportunity for black. Black plays rook f8. So okay, so what's happening after rook f8? Why isn't, say, bishop a6 good here? Let's have a quick look. Well, it's one move too late, in fact. This is one of the comments about this game. It seems sometimes Taimanov was playing the right move, but one move too late is a comment I read about some of these games. Maybe not just this one, but he plays bishop a6 here. Why would this be less effective here? So we see rook b6, rook c7 now, which unfortunately, I mean, it allows queen a4. Does bishop b5 work in this position? Not as well as before. Takes rook c7, queen e8. and it seems black's okay here. Knight takes this is okay for black, but if you just contrast this without the h3, I'm sorry I got to do this. I know this is not just basic stuff, this is pretty finesse stuff, but I've got to do it for my own interest. Why bishop a6 is slightly stronger than h3. If we just have a look at this variation again, bishop b5 takes rook c7. Why wasn't queen e8 possible here? Bishop takes h6. There's a difference. This rook, I guess, can't protect g7. This is pretty crushing. This is an absolutely crushing position, it seems. Knight e7 we can take here, and it's kind of getting over. It's crush time. With this insertion of h3, we have a completely different evaluation emerging. That variation just doesn't exist. Bishop a6, h3 here, bishop a6 here. This is the game. If bishop b5, which wasn't played, but takes rook c7, queen e8, bishop takes here. Well, we've got things like here, but even stronger. There's even stronger ideas. We've got rook f7 at minimum as the defense now. The rook's not on a8. Also f4 is apparently dangerous. Bishop takes. This is just very different. Okay. All right. So in the game, yeah, it seems this now allows. Okay, rook c7 was played, queen a4. So without that bishop b5, we're hitting these guys. Rook takes g7 here, trying for some sort of attack. King takes, bishop takes h6. It's pretty dangerous for the black king, even this position. Now the bishop comes back against that double attack, protecting d1. Rook fb8. Is this compensation nebulous? It looks to be technically equal from an engine perspective, this particular position here. Especially after knight takes f5, it looks as though white should have some good compensation. So Fischer is playing the exchange up, a pawn down, but the exchange up. So he plays rook b1, targeting d1. Okay, we have an exchange of rooks, king h2, and now this forcing move queen d7. Okay, what does the knight want to do here? The knight went to d4. This might be another slight inaccuracy. Apparently, possibly a much stronger move looks to be g4. G4, just keeping that knight on f5. This might be tricky for black. Yeah, you see, I have a problem sometimes with... a lot has been written about this match and the score of the match being really crushing, but if you look at the positions sometimes, and I think both players thought that maybe the score of the match eventually, as it's well known, was 6-0, wasn't completely reflective that the positions were always crushing for black. You know, maybe some of the games should have been draws or whatever. This is a case in point here. Even after g4, it seems as though I don't know if black's really got a crushing position, even though he's the exchange up. His king safety's been compromised. White has the bishop here. But anyway, what happened in the game, this leads to black having a big advantage. Knight d4 happened in the game, move 36. So this might be an inaccuracy here. We see this check. G3. Okay, and now a very dangerous queen b4, threatening to come in with queen e1. So it looks as though white's king is in big danger here. Just with some small inaccuracies. Queen b4, white seems to be in a bit of trouble now. It's not so easy to get out of this. If we try and defend e1, I mean, how can we move this bishop somewhere to defend e1. I mean, if we played bishop a6 as an example, I think this is still dangerous. Things like rook e1, or there's other moves. There's knight e5, threatening nasties like taking and a knight f3 check. There's a lot of tactics. The bishop is standing guard of the f3 square, so this is a very dangerous position after queen b4. Pardon me. Knight c6 was played. Again, I mean, this might not be the absolute best move, but it seems white's position is difficult to play, just from some pretty small inaccuracies. Queen b6 offering the exchange of queens, which wouldn't be too hot for white. Here's the exchange down, and I mean, for example, taking here, taking here, rook b2 is pretty nasty. We're going to win f2 and then a2. These are dropping off. So after queen b6, we see knight takes a7, and Fischer does take now, simplifies, he's the exchange up, and plays rook e1. And there's a really big problem here, this f3 square, to try and defend this f3 square from knight e5 to f3. So white actually resigns, just some tiny inaccuracies, and white's sort of in a resignable position now. If bishop a6, for example, knight e5, how does white parry knight f3 check? As an example, okay, say g4. Well, there's also d4 now, and this pawn's immune because of this check. Where would the bishop go? It's just pretty nasty. It looks pretty crushing. Say check, we can take that bishop there if it goes there. Where does the bishop go? It's got nowhere to go. Bishop here, knight f3 check. Yeah, it's a pretty nasty position. It's actually a forced mate in 4, this particular position, with rook g1 now coming in for a mating net. So yeah, just some small inaccuracies, and we just get this position where this bishop is nudged out of the way for knight e5 to f3 to be completely winning. So there were moments there where white did seem to play quite creatively with like the pawn sacrifice. If we just rewind, so white's interesting pawn sacrifice concept, but it seems, yeah, some total precision was needed, not 27h3, but to use this kind of trump card. This one, yeah, bishop a6. Technically, you have to sometimes use the infiltration points when you've got the opportunities. I know that from some recent games myself. These infiltration points have to be carefully used sometimes, otherwise you can end up losing any advantage you had. So that was the first game of the match. So Mark Taimanov going down in that first game on the 16th of May 1971. Okay, let's look at the second game now. And okay, the second game is a bit of a monster game. It's a huge game. Let's have a look at it anyway. So Fischer playing white e4, and Taimanov plays c5. I hope most of you are aware Mark Taimanov gave his name to an important variation of the Sicilian Taimanov variation. This is the same person, by the way. So knight f3, knight c6. This isn't okay. If we look at the score sheet here, I just want to check something. Nope. Okay. So d4 from Fischer, c takes, knight takes, e6. We see knight b5, d6, bishop f4, e5, bishop drops back to e3, knight f6. This is like a Sicilian Sveshnikov, bishop g5, a little bit like Sicilian Sveshnikov. Now queen a5 check is played here. And we see this very sharp continuation actually now. Queen d2, which promises white a lot of pressure now after queen d2. So if black routinely took the queen, then e4 is protected, and this looks like a pleasant position. There are threats like knight c7. There's pressure potentially on d6 later. So actually the idea is this one, to play knight takes e4 to grab this centre pawn. And now we see queen takes a5, knight takes a5, but this bishop's hanging. No, we haven't got really time to win this rook because this bishop's hanging. So knight c7 check is okay for black after king d7. It's going to be okay because we take this bishop and that knight's stranded for a bit. So here we see the bishop dropping back. So white has basically sacked a pawn for strong pressure on black. So how to deal with knight c7 check? Well, the move king d7 is played here. So Fischer a pawn down here. What do you think about this position at move 12? After knight 1 to c3, do you think white's got enough for the pawn, or do you think black should be okay? If I gave you 20 seconds to evaluate this position, so Fischer's just played knight 1 to c3. Has he got enough? Has he got pressure on d6 coming up? Is it enough to justify the pawn down? What do you guys think about this? Oh, okay. Question: why not? White can grab on a7. Well, okay. Fischer's played this move instead. This knight 1 to c3. If he had played this, let's have a quick look. Knight takes here. I think it activates black. This move. Black's apparently quite getting a bit better after d5. If for example knight b5, d4, and black's going to be getting a very, very nice position. So I don't think the idea is not to take on a7. Now Fischer played this knight 1 c3. I think this is this might have been a novelty Fischer picked up actually from a Russian chess magazine. Knight 1 to c3 instead of taking on a7. In live book, it's one of the top moves. f3 also. Knight takes a7 is only one game in live book, so this is more popular, or f3. Okay, so it keeps some pressure going, and if black tries to kick the knight here, well, black took on, well, sorry, black's got to do something about his knight on e4 anyway. So he takes on c3, knight takes c3. And okay, we've got some potential d-file pressure. We've got nice control of d5 at the moment. So is it troublesome? Let's see, king d8. And actually the knight just goes back now to b5. So, and in this position really is threatening a7 to maybe take on a7. This is a lot different here. And if a6, we just play bishop b6. This would be interesting for white, this kind of thing. So black's got to be careful here after knight b5. He played actually bishop e6. I think this is one of the best moves, bishop e6. Okay, there's frontal pressure on d6. And yeah, black tempts white to, well, take on a7 or take on d6. Now, I don't think either are that good. Sorry, tempting to take on d6 with the move b6. He shields a7. Here, if knight takes d6, I think black could just take this and king e7, and black should be perfectly okay. In fact, let's have a look at this. takes. If we try and trap here, this isn't working so well. Ouch. Yeah, so yeah, there's some tactics here which are quite deep in relation to taking on d6. Let's have a quick look at that again. If knight takes d6, yeah, black can apparently take on a2 here almost. Yeah, that seems to be quite dangerous. Wow. Yeah, because this knight is on b3 just tactically, that finesses the position, the secure line. Okay, so yeah, Fischer didn't go in for this knight takes d6. He avoided that. He played the top engine move. I mean, I don't know how many of us would be tempted just to take on d6. Maybe this is like part of his preparation. He played actually the top engine move f4 instead, which is like seems quite dangerous to take d6 under better circumstances. So f4. E takes f4, bishop takes f4, so we've got three things pointing at d6 now. Knight b7, black's a bit passive. White's bishop now, I mean, it seems nice to get this bishop on this diagonal. He does that. Bishop e2, bishop d7. So it's a full pawn sacrifice. I mean, rook d2, he's building up on d6. He's going to maybe double rooks now. Bishop e7, rook hd1. So all of Fischer's pieces are really very, very nice here. So I think this looks like a great pawn sack. This d6 pawn just looks a bit miserable. Now, black in this position is under great pressure. Concretely, I'm not entirely sure if white's threatening to win material, but bishop f3 stands out as a big idea. So black does something. He gives up his light square. He gives up his light square bishop. Bishop takes b5. Bishop takes b5. I think white has more definite compensation now in that bishop pair. So we've kind of reversed roles actually from the previous game. Fischer is a pawn down with the two bishops. Can he make great use of his light square bishop in this position? The immediate, I mean, I think immediately, I mean, yeah, it's not so easy, this position. Black plays king c7. Okay, connecting the rooks, and maybe also if he wants to lend support for d6. We see rook e2, the bishop comes to f6. Okay, so the king and the knight supporting d6 make this possible, this bishop f6. Rook d e1, which immediately it gives an idea that white's controlling that e file, and rook e7 is also pretty dangerous here under the right circumstance to throw in this check. Rook a c8, bishop c4 hitting f7. That's protected. This knight really wants to come out in the game now. Knight c5. That's stopped. This knight is made to suffer. b4. So there's also a fantastic square for the bishop coming up with bishop d5. Looking at b7 and making rook e7 very dangerous indeed to try and win that b7 knight. This is coming up now. a5 in this position. Bishop d5. So immediately threatening rook e7 check. So black cannot take this pawn. He plays king b8, sidestepping rook e7 check. a3, keeping that knight shut out of the game, out of that c5 square. So this looks very pleasant compensation now for being a pawn down. Much more convincing, I would say, than the previous game when the shoe was on the other foot of the other player. This light square bishop in particular seems quite dominant. I don't know what you guys think of this position to evaluate at move 27, but for me, I'm convinced. The engine gives an evaluation advantage to white by about half a pawn, even though he's a pawn down. That was a crazy variation he missed, taking on d6 earlier with this bishop a2. I don't know if that was part of analysis or something, but yeah, this seems great compensation. Rather be a pawn down with the bishop pair like this, dominant bishop on d5. Masterful play against the backward pawn. I think there have been many great example games, even like Kasparov. You can find great example games where the backward pawn is not actually won. It's just made to inflict misery on the rest of the pieces, and I think that might be the case here. Especially the b7 knight, it's very, very restricted in this position. So I don't know what you guys think. This looks to be a picture of misery for black. But having said that, at move 27, this is a gigantic game, I'm afraid. This is approaching a 90-move game from here. So I think, apologies in advance, I might be doing a quick fast forward on quite a few moves, but it's a great opening, dynamic conception to be a pawn down, get loads of pressure. Here, black gives in, tries to return the pawn here. White is threatening just real domination with move like c4, and then maybe king d2. I mean, say black didn't do much. Black's tied down to f7 as well, yeah. Let's say black just shuffles. What could white do? Actually, this even tactically fails because of just taking her and bishop takes d6. Immediate disaster. Forget that. Okay, rook d8. Whoops. This one to d8, rook e7 is now threatened. So actually things are really tactically just failing. It's not that just the knight's bad, it's pretty terminally bad here after rook e7 takes. Where's the knight going? Ouch. So yeah, I think this probably explains black's next move. Some urgency is needed here in this position to do something about these threats. He plays actually rook fd8. Protecting d6, trying to offer f7. Now rook e7 here, I don't think this quite works now in this position. Black could just take and rook c7. So that protecting d6 is important. So here, okay, Fischer just gets his pawn back. Bishop takes f7. So an opening triumph. This is a miserable position, equal on material, but white's got the positional trump cards. But what about bishop c3? That looks like a dangerous forcing move. The bishop just comes back. d5. Okay, so white's better, but okay, let's see. Rook d1, d4. There's some work to do here. Black has kind of liberated himself, to his credit, with that pawn sack f7. He had to do something. Bishop takes c3, rook takes. Attacking a3. And also threatening things like d3. So king b2. d3 is played anyway. White might be ganging up on d4. This is a new problem in the position. This d4 is still kind of vulnerable there. White could be ganging up with rook e4. So it's d3, trying to liquidate a bit. King takes, d takes, rook e1. Okay. Knight d6 gaining a tempo. Bishop drops back. This pawn is about to be eliminated. But is there some counterplay for black? Check. King b2. Black took on b4. Rook d4. So he's hitting b4 and is also now threatening this fork. So yeah, quite resourceful play from black from the earlier position. But yeah, c3. Rook h4. Bishop takes e2. Hitting the knight. The knight moves back. So after all that, Fischer is a pawn up. But he's got to be very careful here. Yeah, I think he plays another very strong move. h3 goes into a pin. If h3, for example, rook e4 might be a little bit annoying. Fischer plays actually rook d1. So this is move 40. And excuse me, we haven't got all night to go over this game, so I might be fast forwarding now a bit to see what happens here. So a pawn up in this endgame. I'll try and outline plans here. General plan, okay, white's got the pawn majority to try and make use of, trying to keep the knight out of control, out of mischief on key squares. So we see king c7, h3, protecting h2. Rook f4, as though rook f2 is quite dangerous. Rook f1 parrying rook f2, rook e4, bishop d3, rook e5. The bishop here is controlling still that knight on d6, key squares of the knight. Rook f2 controlling that second rank. If for example bishop takes h7, that wouldn't be so hot. Yeah, black's giving. You don't want to give black counterplay with the check, even though that might still be better for white. No, Fischer keeps the second rank here with rook f2. Okay, the pawn is now moved, so we've got a grind. Fischer's using a bit his 2-to-1 pawn majority now. Rook g5, king goes up. Rook a2, so as though that might be useful, but also the king can go to d4 here. King c8, king goes to d4. Check. And now the passed pawn is created with c5, and the bishop dominating that knight. You see that bishop dominating the knight. So we've created a pass c pawn now. But there's a long technical phase here. There is actually a long technical phase. How easy is it to convert this position? G2 is attacked. What do we do about G2? The rook goes back. Here now black is threatening knight e6 check to get that pawn. Bishop c4 dominating the knight again, keeping the knight out of key squares. Rook b2 as though... Okay, rook b2. We see king c6. And now bishop b3. This is interesting stuff. I think bishop a4 is a useful resource here. If for example rook takes c5, this wasn't played, then bishop a4, and we're kind of, I think we're winning after this. If this happened, knight b5, rook takes, we can win this king and pawn ending. That's a winning king and pawn ending. We're just going to take a winning king and pawn ending. So bishop, this bishop move is indirectly defending c5. So we're keeping the knight out of d5. There looks to be knight b5 that was played. King goes here. And I think, again, the same problem. We don't want to run into this pin with rook takes c5. That wasn't played. I think bishop a4 is just winning for white. So king takes c5 was played. This might have been a small inaccuracy here. Maybe check first. But, okay, king takes c5. King f4. Rook moves. And, yes, we're kind of back to being equal on material. I know. So black did seem to be, very resourceful in this game. This is at move 58. We're back equal on material, but this king is closer to these pawns, and the bishop might be more useful than knight. It has to be proven though. We see bishop d1 and h4, king f5, rook h6, king g5. Okay, so knight d6, bishop c2, again restricting that knight. So the king is more usefully placed than that king. That's how the advantage has transformed. Check here, check here, knight king d4, check, rook b5, knight f7, check, rook f5. Is black slowly being driven back here? Yeah, I think black plays a very good move in the circumstance here. He plays g5. If the knight goes here, I mean, there's still work to do, but g5 might be okay. g5 here, knight e5 check, and I know we're going into dust territory, Magnus Carlsen type ending to try and win this. Rook takes g2 at move 70. Can white really win with this h-pawn? This is another question now. Okay, and his bishop's attacked. Let's see, bishop d1. Here, bishop g4. Rook one might be interesting, but king g3 was played. So the rook is cut from that f file, so white clearly wants to make progress here. How does he do this? Check. Rook a4, rook a6, king f4, check. So move 78, king g5, check, check, rook f6. And now, yeah, the rooks come off. And is this a winning ending? King e4, bishop c8. The knight really wants to sacrifice itself for the pawn. Is that really going to be possible? King f4, h4. With the king position here, it just seems unlikely that the knight can try and attack the pawn. It has a go. Knight f3, h5, knight g5. But now I think we're getting into zugzwang territory. Bishop f5, keeping control of several key squares. Knight f3, h6. This pawn is getting up there. Knight g5, king g6. Yep. Knight f3, h7. The pawn seems to be queening. Check. King f6. And finally, at move 89, Taimanov resigns. This is some game which you'll never see on YouTube. I don't think anyone in their right mind would ever want to cover this game on YouTube. It's just, I'm showing you this game from historical, chronological perspective. There are very interesting phases of it. It seems one phase doesn't seem perfect, because why did Fischer lose his pawn? Did he have to lose his pawn? Yeah, it was titanic kind of struggle. I don't know what you guys think about that. That was an 89 mover, but it probably contributed to the psychological collapse of Taimanov. This sort of game grueling. I think there was it was a very interesting opening idea, the pawn sack for continuous pressure and not to win the backward pawn. In fact, I mean, this game is so big, I wonder if we should just carry on next week. I was thinking about doing 3 games, but I'm not so sure now. It's approaching 10 PM here. Maybe we should just do 2 games at a time of this particular match. Okay, so I hope you got something from this game. We do a very quick review of it. It's just an interesting opening novelty to be a pawn down. You'll note the pressure on d6. So f4 instead of going for the pawn. So our temptation might be to go for the pawn. We had lasting pressure. We had a great couple of bishop pair. The knight was restricted tactically and things like rook e7, but I ended up giving back the f7 pawn. The bishop pair for white went. Then we have this situation where it seemed as though the 2-to-1 pawn majority was going to be like classically demonstrated, but Fischer ended up losing his pawn here on the queen side. Yeah, this is really the brutality of what happened. He ends up losing the c5 pawn. I mean, there's pressure on both his pawns. He ends up losing c5. So this king coming up, but a side effect of this, this king ended up to be more aggressive even after he lost that pawn. The king position was important. So black's life was made difficult somehow, and at some point, yeah, black lost the pawn again. I don't know if he could have improved on this to not lose the pawn. Engine valuation around here at move 67 was less than half a pawn for white, knight d6. Maybe g5 was a mistake. I don't know. This position, what would white's plan be? I mean, the king is more aggressive for sure. If white's given some more moves, maybe he puts the bishop here and tries to torture these pawns. But yeah, black managed to lose a pawn again to go a pawn down. at some point here. And then it was just this H pawn, which you usually think the H pawn is not the greatest pawn in endgames, but somehow, the rooks, when the rooks came off, if the rooks didn't come off here, instead of rook takes f6, if rook a7, it will still be some work to do. It seems. I mean, this is not trivial. I think, for example, rook a4 here. This isn't trivial. We could either some accuracy, like it would just carry on. Apparently, king f4. So I don't know. Maybe that was kind of simplifying in white's favour to take on f6. Could have kept the pressure on with rook a7 apparently, but yeah, it simplifies a bit. And this is a lot more manageable now after king e4. In fact, this looks like a key blunder here. It seems knight d3 might offer more resistance. If h4, knight f4, we're offering more resistance, it seems. But in the game, yeah, I think this looks to be a bad idea. Actually, Fischer's moved bishop c8. This is the endgame virtuosos now. It seems this is the top engine move to give white a winning position here. Anything else maybe doesn't work out so well at move at this point. Let's see if why is bishop c8 winning when other things aren't. Bishop e6, knight f3. I think that's the point. Knight f3. We're safeguarding against the h4 and the king coming to f4, and that should be a draw. But with bishop, let's see, this bishop c8, of course, knight f3, there's bishop b7 check. If we play knight f3, we just play bishop b7 check. Then we just take on f3 and we play h4. So this is a brilliant move, bishop c8, maybe underestimated, maybe just miscalculated. Bishop c8 just wins here. So which is probably why black did the rook exchange. Yeah, it seems in this position. Well, king e4 is not the best. After this is just winning for white after bishop c8. And this pawn is making progress. Yeah, a bit of a tragedy for black, I suppose, if he did have some chances to potentially draw the position. Instead he was just ground down. Oh well. Okay, I hope you got something from it. Yeah. Okay, so have a good week. See you next week. Thanks very much.